From a workout going absolutely wrong to a fishing trip where the roles were reversed. This is the most disturbing freak accident iceberg. Let's start at the tip. Level 1. The exploding commode. In Brooklyn, a man walked into his bathroom late at night and flushed his toilet, but instead, something so violent happened that sent him to the ER. It was October 2nd, 2013, around 11 p.m. at Caton Towers, a 16-story apartment building with nearly 300 units on Ocean Parkway in Kensington, Brooklyn. Inside his flat, 58-year-old Michel Pierre went to check if the water was back on after a full-day shutdown for plumbing work. But when he pressed the handle, the toilet exploded. Porcelain shards blasted across the room. Pierre was knocked out, his face, arms, and legs torn open. Neighbors called for help, and FDNY medics rushed him to Methodist Hospital. He survived, but the blast left him shaken with over 30 stitches that closed his cuts. And he wasn't the only one. That same day, 3 other tenants in the building reported their toilets blowing apart in a similar fashion. Investigators traced the cause to plumbing work earlier that day. Crews had been installing a backflow prevention valve, which meant water had been shut off. When it came back, experts believe pressure and air built up in the pipes, causing the explosions. Building officials called it a horrific and unexpected event. Pierre's lawyer later said he would sue for negligence, and in interviews, Pierre admitted he was so traumatized that he now flushes his toilet with a rope, standing outside the bathroom door. The Hydrant's Revenge. On June 21, 2007, in East Oakland, 24-year-old Humberto Hernandez was walking with his wife along the 900 block of 98th Avenue, near International Boulevard. It was an ordinary Thursday evening until a 2007 Ford Escape blew a tire. The SUV turned onto the sidewalk and slammed into a fire hydrant. The impact, combined with the force of the water rushing through the mains, ripped the hydrant loose. Weighing about 200 pounds, it shot into the air like a missile and landed directly on Hernandez's head. His wife, who was right beside him, was not hurt. Emergency crews rushed in, but there was nothing they could do. Hernandez was pronounced dead at 6:08 p.m. at the scene. At the time, officials said it wasn't even clear if the driver would face any charges. Level 2. Birthday Disaster. The incident occurred late at night on March 10, 2015 in Overland Park, Kansas. Around 11 p.m., a reckless driver sped through the red light at almost 70 miles an hour and crashed into Jeff Kudlichek's car, who was driving home for his 23rd birthday. The crash was so violent that Jeff's car was split into 2 pieces, torn apart right there on the street. His body was thrown from the wreck and hit a roadside signpost. His injuries were almost impossible to list. Both legs were broken and compound fractures, 9 ribs snapped, a lung punctured. Doctors said his legs had arrived essentially backwards.
One of the officers on the truck said, "I don't think he's alive."
He was put in a coma for 3 weeks and spent about 70 days in the hospital, and many more painful months in rehab. The other driver, Michael Aaron Smith, had downed 8 to 10 drinks at Johnny's Tavern in Shawnee, then 1 more at Barley's Brewhouse in Overland Park before getting behind the wheel that night. His blood alcohol content was 0.179, which is more than twice the legal limit. Finally, 13 months later, he pleaded guilty with aggravated battery while DUI. The judge sentenced him to 31 months in prison and ordered more than $1.5 million in restitution, along with $18,000 to the Crime Victim Fund. Jeff also sued the bars that had served Smith, saying they helped cause the crash. But in 2019, the Kansas Supreme Court ruled against him. The justices said Kansas has no dram shop law, meaning bars can't be held liable for what customers do once they drive away. Plane stunt. On October 20th, 2018, Canadian rapper John James McMurray was filming near Westworld in North Okanagan. His bold plan was to walk out on the wing of a small Cessna while rapping with cameras rolling from another plane in the sky. John had trained for months. He loved stunts, skydiving, and parachuting, often mixing them into his music. But this time, something went wrong. He updated his fans that there's an issue with one of the planes. Once it got fixed, they started filming anyway.
Alright, our other plane is going to be pulling in any time. It's fixed. So it's pretty much game time. This is crazy. I've been manifesting this for months, so the fact this is actually coming to fruition right now is a big day for me, so.
At first, the sequence went as planned. The Cessna flew steadily while John stepped onto the wing. But as he moved further out, the balance shifted. The plane tilted and began to spiral down. John held on, trying to steady himself. Seconds ticked away, then he let go. But it was too late. The Cessna was already too low. He had no time to open his parachute. He crashed into a hayfield below. The pilot managed to pull the Cessna out of its dive and landed safely. No one else was hurt. Emergency calls went out right away. RCMP officers and the BC Coroner's Service found John dead at the scene. Vacation gone wrong. On the night of December 5th, 2024, 33-year-old Turek was walking with his girlfriend in Phuket's Talang district. They were heading to a restaurant, the ground still wet from evening rain. Around 9:30 p.m., as they made their way along Donjam Tao Road, Kya slipped on the pavement. Instinctively, he reached for a nearby streetlight pole to steady himself. The second he touched it, a surge of electricity shot through his body. Witnesses said he collapsed instantly. A bystander who tried to pull him away was shocked too, though not fatally. His girlfriend could only watch in horror. Emergency crews rushed him to Thalang Hospital, but doctors pronounced him dead shortly after arrival. Police said they got the first call at around 9:30 p.m. Later that night, engineers from the Provincial Electricity Authority inspected the pole. Tests showed a 220-volt current leaking into the metal casing. Power was cut, and a safety cover was installed to prevent anyone else from being hurt. Before we dive deeper, hit that like button and subscribe. There are plenty more icebergs like this one. Now, let's move on to the next level. Level 3. A different type of explosions. On July 4th, 2024, a neighborhood party on Cottonwood Drive in Somerville ran late into the night. Among the crowd was 41-year-old Alan Ray McGrew. He was dressed for the holiday in an Uncle Sam outfit with a tall hat. He moved through the block, greeting friends and dancing. His wife later told deputies he had started drinking around 6 in the evening while they hosted. A little after 10:20 p.m., Alan picked up a large firework, lit the fuse, and in a burst of showmanship, placed it on his head. Family and neighbors yelled for him to stop and tried to pull him back, but they were too late. It exploded and caused fatal head trauma. Deputies and paramedics arrived within 30 to 60 minutes, but the injury was too severe. He was pronounced dead at 11:10 p.m. His wife later said she believed he was showing off. The celebration ended with sirens and tape, and a neighborhood left in shock. Hunter becomes the prey. The morning of December 9th, 2024 started like any other hunt for Lester C. Harvey Jr. This 58-year-old adventurous was with his hunting party in the woods of Lunenburg County, Virginia. They were experienced, they knew the area, and they were tracking a black bear. They pursued the bear until it scrambled up a tree to escape. They were about 10 feet back when one of the hunters raised their firearm and took a clean shot. The bear was hit. This is where a normal story would end, but what happened next was a freak accident. Instead of hitting the ground, the giant bear fell where Lester Harvey was standing. The full weight of the animal crashed down on top of him. Chaos erupted. His partners rushed to his side, providing first aid while waiting for help to arrive. An emergency call went out, and the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources was notified of the accident around 9:50 a.m. Harvey was first rushed to a local hospital in South Hill, but his condition was so critical that he was quickly transferred to the VCU Medical Center in Richmond, a top-level trauma facility. For 4 long days, he fought for his life, and then on Friday, December 13th, Lester Clayton Harvey Jr. died. The internal injuries from the crushing impact were too much to overcome. A vicious foul play. The event was planned for late February 2021, set to take place near the Yelama Temple on the outskirts of Lothian Village. Among the organizers and participants was a 45-year-old man named Tangula Satish. Satish took his rooster to arm it for the fight. He securely tied a razor-sharp 3-inch blade known locally as a kodikati. This brutal practice is meant to ensure a quick and bloody fight. This is where the day took a horrible turn. As Satish was handling the bird, either preparing it for the fight or trying to release it into the ring, the rooster panicked. It violently tried to escape his grip. During that struggle, the blade strapped to its leg sliced deep into Satish's groin. The cut was severe, and blood started rapidly gushing out. The other participants rushed to get him to a hospital, but Satish bled to death on the way. When police arrived, they launched a manhunt for the 15 people involved in organizing the illegal event, but they also had to secure the weapon, which was still attached to the rooster. So the police captured the bird and took it into custody at the Golapalli station. After a brief stay in a cell, the rooster was transferred to a local poultry farm for its own protection. It had to be produced in court against the human organizers, who were ultimately responsible for the day's tragic outcome. The weight of a workout. This first story takes us to Los Angeles on September 28, 2009. Stephen Johnson, a star running back for the USC Trojans, was in the university gym. That morning, he was on the bench press, pushing about 275 pounds. In an instant, the bar slipped from his hands. It came crashing down across his throat. He still freed himself, got up, and sat there for a while before asking for help. The weight smashed his larynx and tore one of his vocal cords. Doctors said it was the kind of injury that could have easily killed him. Somehow, Johnson lived.
By that time, we had established an airway. We had controlled all bleeding, so we knew that he was going to survive it. We didn't know if he'd speak. We had no idea if he'd ever swallow safely again. And we didn't know if we'd ever get that tracheostomy tube out of him.
Multiple surgeries were done to rebuild his throat and voice box. He was still unable to speak, but he was released from the hospital in October. A year later, he even tried for an NFL comeback, though an ankle injury ended his shot at the league. He later sued USC, and the case was settled in 2012. 8 years later, another bench press turned tragic. This time, it was in Brisbane, Australia. On September 26, 2017, 15-year-old Ben Shaw walked into his local gym. Dedicated and determined, he loaded nearly 100 kilograms, about 216 pounds, onto the bar. But no one was nearby to spot on life support, and for 4 days, his family prayed for a miracle. On September 30th, 2017, he died. Surfing gone wrong. The incident occurred around 9:30 a.m. on October 18th, 2024. 36-year-old Julia Manfrini was out for a morning surf session at the Ombak Bang Bang surf break off Masakud Island in Indonesia. She was an Italian surfer and the co-founder of a company called A-Wave Travel. Manfrini was enjoying the water with friends on a clear day. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary during the session. Suddenly, a long, sharp-billed fish leapt from the water at high speed. Its path directly intersected with Manfrini. The fish struck her in the upper left chest with its bill. The impact from the strike was severe and deeply penetrating. It left a single stab wound approximately 5 centimeters deep. Manfrini was rushed to the Peipei Pasakyat Taileliu Health Clinic for urgent medical care. Medical staff at the clinic attended to her wound, but the injury was too critical. Despite their efforts to save her, Julia Manfrini died shortly after her arrival. Level 4. Becoming a fossil. On Saturday, May 22, 2021, in Santa Coloma de Gramenet, just outside Barcelona, a giant papier-mâché stegosaurus stood beside the old cubic cinema building. Around midday, a father and his young son walked past the statue. The boy noticed a weird smell from the dinosaur's hollow leg. His father went to check what was wrong. He looked through a crack in the dinosaur's leg, and what he saw shocked him. Inside, it was a man's body jammed upside down. Police and firefighters arrived quickly. At first, some wondered if it was a mannequin, but it wasn't. It was a 39-year-old man who had been reported missing only hours earlier. Crews had to saw open the leg of the dinosaur, and a crane was brought in to pull him free. Investigators found no signs of foul play. The autopsy confirmed he had died from suffocation, trapped in a position where he couldn't breathe. The most likely explanation was both simple and tragic. The man had dropped his phone inside the statue. In trying to retrieve it, he crawled in headfirst through the narrow opening in the leg. Gravity pulled him deeper until he was stuck, unable to climb back out. By July 2021, the case was officially ruled a tragic accident. Bali's Monkey Forest Mayhem. On December 10, 2024, the sacred Monkey Forest Sanctuary in Ubud, Bali was full of tourists. Families and groups walked the paths near the Pura Prajapati temple. That morning, heavy rain had soaked the ground, and strong winds swept through the forest. Visitors kept moving, not knowing what was coming. At 12:25 p.m., the wind picked up again. Witnesses later said it looked like a small tornado tearing through the trees. It made a massive banyan tree crash down across the path, pulling tourists ran for safety as the trees fell, but not everyone was fortunate enough to escape. F. Justine Christine, 32, from France, and Kim Hoyan, 42, from South Korea, were hit and killed instantly. Lee Sunny, 43, also from South Korea, was left badly hurt. A child suffered broken ribs that needed surgery. In total, 3 people were hospitalized. The monkey forest closed for 2 days for inspections and a cleansing ceremony. Management promised victims' families would receive insurance compensation, calling the tragedy a natural disaster beyond human control. Stab-proof vest versus the unstoppable knife. On the evening of August 23, 2017, 22-year-old Jordan Easton was at a friend's home in Teesside, England. He had just marked his birthday 5 days earlier. That night, he was showing off what he believed was a stab-proof vest. To prove his point, Jordan picked up a kitchen knife and stabbed himself. He was 100% sure the vest would stop it. His friends panicked and rushed him to the University Hospital of North Tees, but doctors could not save him. Jordan Easton died shortly after arrival. A police detective called it a boisterous act, stressing that Jordan never meant to harm himself. Level 5. Showmanship Disaster. They planned a showstopper that literally stopped the show. On January 18, 2024, almost 680 employees and their families gathered at Limelight Gardens inside Ramoji Film City in Hyderabad for Vistech's 25th anniversary. Everyone was excited, waiting for the big reveal that would kick off the night. The company's founder and CEO, Sanjay Shah, along with the president, Viswanath Raju Datla, decided to make a dramatic entrance. They climbed into an iron cage held up by 2 iron cables. As the music played, the cage began to lower slowly from a height of over 15 feet. At first, it looked impressive. Then suddenly, one of the cables snapped. With no precautions in place, the cage tilted sharply, and both men slipped out and crashed onto the concrete below. The cheers turned into screams of terror. An ambulance rushed Shah and Datla to a nearby hospital before transferring them to Yashoda Hospital in Malakpet. Doctors worked through the night, but at 12:10 a.m. on January 19th, Sanjay Shah was declared dead. Datla survived, but his injuries were severe, including head trauma, and his condition was critical. Police at Abdullah Permit registered a case against Ramoji Film City management, the event organizers, the security chief, the special effects contractor, and the rope operator. The charges covered death by negligence, endangering life, and negligent use of machinery. Authorities also ordered a stop to all cage and crane stunts at Ramoji until the inquiry was finished. The Amazing Joe. They called him the Amazing Joe, and on Halloween night in 1990, he wanted to prove it. On October 31st, 1990, families gathered at Blackbeard's Family Fun Center in Fresno, California. About 150 people, many with their kids, stood around a 7-foot grave dug into the ground. At the center of attention was 32-year-old Joseph W. Burris, a recovering addict turned escape artist. He dreamed of being the next Houdini and greater. Burris arrived in a white tuxedo. He was handcuffed, chained, and locked inside a clear coffin made of plexiglass. Assistants lowered the coffin into the grave. Dirt began to fall, but almost right away, he knocked on the lid. A chain around his neck was choking him. Workers paused, adjusted the setup, and sealed him back in. The burial resumed. First came about 3 feet of dirt. Then a cement truck backed up. Wet cement poured into the grave, another 3 feet, heavy and relentless. Burris had escaped a dirt-only stun before, but this time was different. Plexiglass was never built to hold that kind of load. The coffins gave in with a sharp crack. Tons of dirt and cement crushed down, crushing the box in seconds. Rescuers jumped into the grave with shovels, clawing through the cement and dirt. They dug frantically, but the weight was too much. By the time they reached the coffin, it had already collapsed around him. Efforts to revive him failed. Joseph Amazing Joe Burris died at the scene. Toilet disaster. On Friday, January 27, 2023, 60-year-old engineer Kevin Holding was working at Cambridge Circus, right outside the Palace Theatre. His task was to service one of Westminster's pop-up urinals, the telescopic kind that stays underground during the day and rises at night. Around 1 p.m., witnesses saw the unit drop suddenly. Kevin was underneath it when the heavy structure came down, pinning him below street level. People called for help right away. Emergency crews poured in, about 25 firefighters, ambulance teams, and even London's air ambulance tried to save him. They worked in the tight underground space to pry the unit open while police sealed off the junction, but progress was slow. The rescue effort stalled for hours because the team had to wait for a special crane. By the time that lifting vehicle finally arrived at about 3:15 p.m., Kevin had already been trapped for far too long. At 3:40 p.m., more than 2 hours after the urinal fell, he was pronounced dead at the scene. A postmortem later confirmed the cause as suffocation due to the heavy pressure of the toilet. A gardener's unnatural end. On June 23, 2014, 42-year-old landscaper Hernan Gutierrez was working with 2 colleagues in Davie, Florida. Their job that afternoon was to clear brush along Southwest 57th Street, just east of Pine Island Road. They were working with an industrial wood chipper, which was designed to pull in trees and shred them into mulch within seconds. Gutierrez stepped forward to feed in another load. In a blink, something went wrong. His glove, his sleeve, or maybe just the angle of his grip got caught. The machine pulled him in before anyone could react. His co-workers rushed towards him, shouting, but the blades gave no second chances. When police and medics arrived, it was already over. Officers called it a gruesome incident. Federal safety investigators launched a review. They knew the story too well. Wood chippers are among the most dangerous machines on a worksite. Once something is caught, the rollers drag it in with unstoppable force. Without proper shutoffs or feed tables, there's no escape. the Manhattan Promenade. It was August 22, 2019, just after 8 a.m. at the Manhattan Promenade, a 23-story tower on 3rd Avenue and East 26th Street. Commuters crowded the elevators, heading out for their day. Among them was 30-year-old Sam Weisbrun. At 8:15, the doors opened on the ground floor. One person got off safely. Sam followed close behind. That's when the unthinkable happened. The elevator suddenly dropped while the doors were still open. Sam was caught in the gap, crushed between the lift and the shaft wall before anyone could react. Inside, 5 people were trapped, pressing against the walls as the elevator jolted to a stop 1 floor below. The first 911 call came in at 8:27. Firefighters and paramedics swarmed the building, but Sam was pronounced dead at the scene. Crews then focused on rescuing the trapped passengers. For residents, it was devastating, but not entirely shocking. For months, they had filed complaints about both elevators. Just 3 months earlier, inspectors had flagged a tampered safety device on the other elevator in the building, but not the one Sam was in. To make it worse, the elevator that failed had passed a private inspection only 3 weeks before. Investigators launched probes to figure out why it dropped. Within a week, management announced both elevators would be replaced. By November, they secured permits to add emergency rope grip devices. The residents said upgrades were slow or never materialized. Some residents were scared to even get on the elevator, and many avoided the elevators completely. Some tenants even staged a rent strike, accusing management of chronic neglect. Fatal parasailing incident. On May 28, 2025, 19-year-old Tijana Radonjic from Novi Sad, Serbia, went parasailing over the Budva Riviera in Montenegro. The beach was packed, boats cut across the waves, and Tijana floated almost 50 meters above the sea. At first, everything looked normal, but witnesses soon noticed her struggling in midair. She was tugging at her life vest and waist buckle, clearly in distress. Seconds later, she detached from the tow line. Before anyone could react, Tijana plunged straight into the Adriatic Sea. Tourists pulled her from the water and sped back to the marina. But by the time medics arrived, it was too late. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Police opened an investigation immediately. Clips of her fall spread across social media within hours, shocking viewers worldwide. Some reports suggested she had been invited to appear in a promotional video for the parasailing operator. The company's owner insisted Tijana had been calm before takeoff, that she had received a basic safety briefing, and claiming he had no idea why she would undo her belt. Her family rejected any suggestion that she acted deliberately. They demanded answers and a full inquiry. Weeks later, their lawyer said the same operator was still working at the site with the same parachute and vessel. The family pointed to this as proof that regulations were too weak and oversight was lacking. Level 6. Local inventor's final invention. On August 10, 2021, in Maharashtra's Yavatmal district in India, 24-year-old Sheikh Ismail Sheikh Ibrahim rolled out the invention he had spent 2 years creating. Locals knew him as Yavatmal's Rancho, after the genius inventor in Three Idiots. He had dropped out of school and worked in his brother's welding shop. But with steel pipes, spare parts, and the engine of a Maruti 800 car, he built what he proudly named the Munna helicopter. That night, friends gathered with their phones to film another trial. Ismail's single-seater had already managed short hops a few feet off the ground, and he dreamed of showing it off publicly on Independence Day, just 5 days away. The engine roared, and the rotors spun. For a moment, it looked like his dream was taking shape. Then the unthinkable happened. The tail rotor tore free, smashing into the main blades. A shard of metal shot into the cockpit and struck Ismail in the neck and head. His friends rushed forward, dragged him out, and sped him to the hospital in Passad. Doctors could only pronounce him dead. That evening, a close friend explained that while the machine had a meter to measure the speed of the main rotor, it had none for the tail. Ismail likely never realized how dangerously fast it was spinning. The tuna oven incident. On October 11, 2012, 62-year-old Jose Molina started his early shift at the Bumblebee Foods plant in Santa Fe Springs, Los Angeles County. A little after 4 a.m., he climbed into retort number 6, a steel sterilizer nearly 35 feet long, to adjust a chain. These giant machines were used to seal and cook tuna with superheated steam. While Jose was inside, a worker came by. Seeing only his pallet jack nearby, he assumed Jose had stepped away. Without checking, he loaded about 12,000 pounds of canned tuna, closed the door, and started the cycle. The chamber heated to around 270 degrees Fahrenheit. Jose was trapped. By 5:30 a.m., supervisors noticed he was missing. They paged him and searched the plant, but no one thought to check the running oven. Almost 3 hours later, they traced his last task back to retort 6. Workers shut it down and waited for the heat and pressure to drop. At 7:20 a.m., firefighters opened the door. Jose was at the far end. He never had a chance. Investigators later said that the oven should have been treated as a confined space with an attendant, a lockout system to prevent it from being started, and an emergency rescue plan. None of that was in place. It was a complete failure of safety. The legal fallout was huge. In 2015, Bumblebee Foods and 2 managers faced criminal charges for willfully violating safety laws. The company agreed to a $6 million settlement, $3 million to replace its old retorts with automated systems, $1.5 million for Jose's family, and the rest in fines and enforcement costs. Managers received probation, community service, and mandatory training. The company was forced to retrain staff, install cameras, and publicly admit guilt. The Crocodile Crash. On August 25, 2010, a Philair commuter plane was finishing its run across the Congo. The LET L410 turbolet carried 21 people, flying the last leg towards Bandundu Airport. It was just after 1 in the afternoon when the aircraft suddenly lost control. Moments later, it slammed into a house near the airfield. The house was destroyed, but no one inside was hurt. Inside the plane, only 1 passenger survived. 20 people, including both pilots, were killed. At first, investigators considered the fuel situation. There had been no fire after impact, which led to speculation of fuel starvation. But checks show the aircraft still had fuel in its tanks. With little recorder data and no clear mechanical failure confirmed, the cause remained a mystery. Then came the survivor's story. According to the only person who lived, a passenger had smuggled a crocodile on board in a sports bag. As the aircraft ascended, the reptile somehow got loose. Panic spread through the cabin. People rushed forward, throwing the plane off balance. The center of gravity shifted and the pilots lost control. When rescuers searched the wreckage, they did find a crocodile. Some reports claimed it survived the crash, only to be killed with a machete soon after. That detail was never officially verified, but it made headlines around the world. But a UK investigator called the crocodile theory extremely unlikely. With no black box to confirm what happened, the coroner left the verdict open. The Chatsworth Collision. On September 12, 2008, Metrolink train 111 left Los Angeles Union Station, bound for Ventura County. At the same time, a Union Pacific freight train rolled toward the city. The plan was simple. The freight would wait on a sidetrack near Chatsworth in the San Fernando Valley while the Metrolink stopped at a red light. Then each would move on. But around 4:22 p.m., train 111 didn't stop. It blew past the red light at CP Topanga and cut onto the track line for the freight. Seconds later, the 2 trains smashed into each other at nearly full speed. The force was brutal. The Metrolink engine drove more than 50 feet into the first passenger car, crushing rows of seats and the people in them. 25 people lost their lives, including the engineer, and more than 100 others were hurt. Some survivors crawled out of broken windows, while rescuers fought to pull passengers from the wreckage as helicopters circled above. Investigators checked the signals first Tests showed they worked. The westbound light was red, the freight crew saw it, and the recorder proved it. The real reason behind the crash was something far more absurd. Just before the crash, the Metrolink engineer missed a red stop signal because he was texting on his phone while operating the train. It wasn't just a distraction that killed people that day. There was no safety net. If an engineer missed a signal, nothing stopped the train. A system called positive train control already existed, but it hadn't been installed. The crash changed that. Within days, California banned phone use by train crews. Weeks later, Congress ordered positive train control across the US. Level 7. The Machinery's Fatal Embrace. On the morning of January 8, 2013, Cameron Minshall started his shift at Huntley Mount Engineering in Bury, Greater Manchester. He was only 4 weeks into an apprenticeship, earning barely £3 an hour. Most days, he was left alone, told to watch the others and figure it out. That day, Cameron was told to polish metal pieces on a CNC lathe. At around 10:30 a.m., the worst happened. Cameron's loose overalls brushed against the spinning chuck. In a split second, the fabric cut. The machine yanked him forward with unstoppable force. His body slammed into the steel, his head and face taking the full impact. After hearing his screams, fire crews were called in immediately. They cut him free, but it was too late. The boy who had walked in that morning, full of promise, was gone within minutes.
You're my son, my baby boy, and I will try my best to be strong. I can't read anymore.
The investigation revealed the truth. This wasn't a freak accident. The safety systems had been bypassed. Dangerous shortcuts like this were routine. Cameron had been thrown into a job no 16-year-old should have ever been near. 2 years later, a Manchester court delivered its verdict. Huntley Mount Engineering was convicted of corporate manslaughter. The company's director of safety, Zafar Hussain, was jailed and banned from running firms for 10 years. His son, the supervisor on duty, got a suspended sentence. Even the training provider that placed Cameron there was fined. A different type of strike. It was a village football match in the Congo. Two teams battled, not knowing the next strike wouldn't come from a player, but from the sky. Over the weekend of October 24th to 25th, 1998, in the Kasai region, the teams of Ben Ashadi and Basanga faced off. The score was tied 1-1 when a storm rolled in. As players fought for possession, a bolt of lightning hit the pitch with terrifying force. The strike killed 11 players from Banashadi instantly, and dozens more around the field suffered burns. Yet the other teams, standing only yards away, walked away untouched. Soon, the shock turned into chaos. Villagers whispered about witchcraft, believing the storm had chosen sides. Others said it was nothing more than a cruel chance. The timing made things even worse. Congo was in the middle of a civil war, and reporters admitted they couldn't confirm the deaths firsthand. This is just the start of our Iceberg series. We've got more chilling disasters coming soon, so stick around and don't miss what's next.